Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Most Forest fans could only see defeats happening at St James's Park today, and most fans, as it turns out, were right. Yes, it was a better first half from the men in red, and the system change seemed to work, whilst the commitment and endeavour was promising. But when you're not really laying a glove on your opponent's goal and then come off second best for pretty much all of the second 45 minutes, the writing is well and truly on the wall. In the end, a 2-0 defeat might be viewed as kind, given some of the saves Matz Sels had to make from a plethora of Newcastle chances. Under Ange Postecoglou, it's now played 7, drawn 2, lost 5, and yes, won none. It's a struggle. It's a fight. These were Ange's words after the match ended, but the question now on everyone's lips is, will he be given more time to turn it around? Did we see enough today to be confident things will change? Or is it now inevitable that Marinakis pulls the plug before it really is too late? Welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram. Joining me on the panel for this one, we have Andrew Cove and Bruce Johnstone. We all love our football club, perhaps too much, because right now it really hurts.
I love a challenge. The alternative is that I wouldn't, be sitting at home watching a game, and I don't want to do that. I want to be in the middle of it. So that's where I am. And the belief I had and the confidence I had going into the job hasn't wavered one bit. We haven't got the results in this period, but not through the lack of effort from the players or the lack of commitment to a different style of football. All those things are there. We just got to get the results now, and we've got 2 weeks to get that right.
It is love, isn't it, that makes you kind of feel all kinds of things. You can love your mum, your dad, your wife, your brother, your sister, your child, of course. Pretty simple. But when it's your football team as well, it's a different kind of love, some might say. And it kind of can make you go a bit crazy, go a little bit bonkers in the head. We all live and breathe it so very, very much. And, when it's hurting, when the team's hurting, when things aren't going well at the club, it just does tend to affect everything. And only love can hurt like this. I kind of thought that was quite apt. We're all feeling quite sad, all feeling quite low, but we're going to try and get through the next hour with chatting about how the game went today at Newcastle. And of course, we'll be talking about Ange Postecoglou. Andrew Cove is with us, and Brucey, 2 of our Americans from the other side of the pond. Well, Brucey is the real American, of course. Andrew's just an expat living in the States at the moment. How are you doing, Andrew?
I think collectively we've all probably been better, right? Everything apart from the football's, pretty good. But sadly, we're not here to talk about all the other stuff that I do outside of football. And things aren't great. We'll get into it more as we get into the pod. But it's worrying times on what should have been, such a momentous season. I think that's what hurts the most. It stings at the moment.
It does indeed. Bruce, how are you doing, buddy?
Been better. It would be how I would describe myself right now. I didn't plan on wearing all black today, but I guess I'm wearing all black to be in mourning. So that's the vibe in the house right now.
We're going to try and uplift it a little bit, okay? I mean, I've had my eye on social media today after the match, and sort of managed to dip in and out of a few pods as well, just to kind of gauge how people were feeling. So I've got a good idea of that. I want to know how you guys in the chat are feeling. So let us know your thoughts by please chipping in with the comments, and we'll try and show 1 or 2 on screen. Please do like this video. Please do subscribe. Thank you very much for a few 5-star reviews trickling in on Apple Podcasts and lots of positive comments on Spotify. You can now catch us on Amazon as well, on Pocket Casts. We're part of the Sports Podcast Network. All right. Andrew, kick us off then. Let's kind of go back. We're going to look at the match first. I think the first thing I always focus on is the team selection. So give us your thoughts on that, because it was, again, a bit different. It was a bit interesting. What did you think about the team when you saw it? And give us your general match thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think that there's two trains of thought on this. I think we've talked at length over the last few games about stability and trying to pick a consistent 11 so that they can get used to that system. So whenever you see that number of changes, again, it always raises question marks. I think taking that out of the equation and just looking at the team that he selected, I think we all thought on paper that having a player like Yates in there and that good old fashioned grit, that workhorse that's going to give you 100% was probably a good thing on paper. And I think he, for most of the game, delivered on that promise as well, that he was exactly what he was in there for. As the game went on, I thought Ange made the right substitutions probably at the right time, or at least in terms of the timing. You can always talk about whether the right players came on or not. The only question mark I would have had about the initial selection was, what does Amari Hutchinson need to do to get a start? I know, Greg, you're a huge fan of him. When he came on, he looked busy, he looked interesting. So team selection on paper is fine. I want Ange to just pick an 11, find his best 11 and just keep with that 11 and let it learn the system if that's the way we're going to go. Game itself was okay, I guess, for the first half. I don't think we threatened that much. I think we looked okay on the ball. I think we looked more resolute at the back, which is one of the things we've been asking for. But then when you play, 5 defenders and 4 across the midfield, you should be, more secure at the back. So I don't think we threatened much going forward at all, really, during the game until maybe that last kind of 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll get into the Gibbs-White foul or not foul, obviously, in due course. I think on another day that gets given and maybe we ride it out for a 0-0. I didn't see a scoring the entire game. So disappointing. It's becoming a trend, unfortunately. I think that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, I pretty much concur. Bruce, when it comes to you, give us your general thoughts on the game itself. Any surprises for you with the team when it came out?
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting him to go with the back 3 again. So that was a shock. Not that I hated it once the game started to kick off. We obviously looked a lot more sound in defense, and Cunha looked amazing out there. That was his first start, right? That was his first start for us, and he came out and he didn't disappoint. He was cool, he's calm, he's collected, and he reminded me of Murillo when he first broke the starting 11. So that was definitely a bright spot. But as the game progressed, like Andrew said, I just didn't see us scoring. We didn't look a threat. And the subs, I agree. They were needed. It came out at the right time, but it seemed like Jesus was not as effective as he has been in the past. Wood looked a little bit better in that kind of system. But just to go back, to the starting 11. Richard and I were texting back and forth. It just screamed of a desperate manager trying to get buckle in and try not to lose a match rather than go for it and try to win it. But to be honest, the game played out like I expected.
Yeah, I had low expectations coming in. I changed my prediction from a draw to a defeat just purely because I just didn't think that this team was going to have it in them to go on. And that kind of almost says it, doesn't it? If you've got no belief, if you think, actually, you know what, after being at Midtjylland at home in the home game, obviously, with Midtjylland there and seeing how that transpired, it just felt like going to Newcastle, which obviously is a tough place to go, but I want to caveat that going into this game, they were just a couple of places and a point above us. Their Premier League start hasn't been amazing either, but they were just head and shoulders above us in that second half. I was pleased with the first half. I have to say I was pleased. At half time, I was tweeting or messaging rather to whoever I was talking to much better, feeling more confident without it being show-stopping. A back 3, he tried it at home on Thursday night. He clearly sees that as a vehicle towards maybe a bit more defensive stability. I mean, and obviously I know it all unravelled when he switched it the other night, but it was positive to see Jay Cunha come in and play the way he did because he does look cool. He does look quite relaxed. He got his head on quite a lot of things. I thought Morato was good again, barring the occasional rick that he kind of got himself out of jail with against Voltemada in the second half. But he's been positive. He stepped in for Murillo really rather well. So I was happy with him. Nico Williams, kept Alanga pretty much not quiet, but quietish. You know, he was doing rather well against him, and the positives were there. I was worried when they got a corner, and they had quite a few corners, but we did rather well at corners against Day. Okay, I know that Joe Linton did get a header on goal. Sels makes the save that any keeper should be saving from that range. There was hardly any power on the header. It was a good save, but, you know, let's not call it anything other than that. So I felt, again, I'm trying to be positive. There were improvements from the set-piece defending. We were getting the first contact on the ball. We were managing to get the ball clear. And I kind of thought, okay, if he's come to set up for a point, I can live with that. Given the where we've been and what we're going through at the moment, I can live if we're going to walk away from St James's Park with a point. It was the second half that obviously all the problems started to happen. I mean, Andrew, coming back to you then, were you feeling particularly worried in that first half, or were you feeling quite comfortable as I was?
I think you made a really good point, and there's a big distinction on this, that we were comfortable and we were in the game. And that formation and that setup kept us in the game. But I don't think we ever looked, as we've said before, like we were actually going to go ahead and get anything other than a point. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what Ange set us up to be in that first half, it was fine. It was successful. I think, you know, a couple of, you know, saves that, like you say, we should be making, we kept them at bay. But to go back to that point, that was all it was ever going to be. You know, it was the definition at times of what Nuno ball could have been at its best. We were sitting back, absorbing pressure. The problem is we didn't have an Alanga and that burst of pace to be able to hit a team on the break. You think back to the last game at St James's Park where Chris Wood got that hat-trick. All those goals stemmed from, like, you know, these rapid breaks with Alanga. It never felt like, you know, we could absorb the pressure and then go and hit them and get anything out of it. So, yeah, I think it was designed to do exactly what it was designed to do, but it was designed not to win a football game. It was designed not to lose a football game. And I think therein lies the problem. That's not Ange's ethos. That's not his, you know, his style of play. So, yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, like I said, it kept us in the game. I don't know what else we can say. It kept us in the game, but that was all it was ever going to be.
I mean, the Ange ball thing gets thrown around all the time. And Sky mentioned Ange ball over here on our coverage umpteen times today. And so we want him to be pragmatic and to play a horses for courses type of game. If you're going to go all gung-ho every time, then you know you're going to lose football games. So I can understand why he kind of set up the way he did, Bruce. But, you know, what kind of message does that send to the players when he's trying to instill a philosophy in them, and then he's switching the formations and he's making all these changes? I know that obviously we've had struggles with the likes of Luiz and Zinchenko and Murillo. Although he was on the bench, they still have those injuries. Ola Aina hasn't featured at all. So, you know, he's relying on Savona coming in. He's relying on Jay Cunha coming in. I mean, Ryan Yates is another one who's come in. And I was asking for him to play against Midtjylland. Thought it was a perfect game for him because they bullied the hell out of us the other night. They were so physical and we just didn't match up to them. I was impressed with Yates today. I'm going to say it. There was a time when he was wrestling with Voltemada, who's 55 times bigger than him. But he's getting the elbow in the face. And that's what you get with Ryan Yates. All these managers that he's played under and all these people that in the fan base that write him off time and time again. I'm not saying that Ryan Yates is the best player in the world. We know he's not. But there's a time and a place for a Ryan Yates. And today in that first half, I thought he stepped up and showed leadership. And him being in the team for me, Bruce, was a positive thing because he's coming in to do a certain job. And you talk about chances that we didn't have, Andrew, as well. I mean, there was the one that Gibbs White was doing his best down that right. He put a great ball in. And Wood from last year anticipates that the defender lets it go through his legs and bangs it in first time. He can't just seem to get his feet sorted. So there was like flashes of a moment, but hardly anything to cling on to. What are your thoughts on yourself, Bruce, on Yates in that first half? And do you think that maybe we're going to see more of him going forwards?
No, I think Yates was, to your point, the right selection for this kind of match. And with you asked what kind of message that does this send to the players. I think for this one in particular, just, hey, you're in for a scrap today. This is a big, midfield that will push people around and dominate a game if you let them. And Ryan Yates has got that S-housery enough about him that he'll definitely get in their heads. He'll switch things up a little bit. I'm a fan of Ryan Yates. I know he splits the fan base. I've always liked him. Always liked his style. I understand he's not the most technical gifted player we have, but he does a job. He'll make a mistake, as will everybody, but I like him. I liked him. I liked him today. I thought he brought a lot of energy and that leadership to a pitch that you need sometimes, especially in the midfield. But I get it. I get why people don't like him. I see it. But today he was the right selection. It was the right one to go with. And to your point about the Michelin game, yeah, you're right. He probably should have started that one as well.
Okay. So I want to say hello to a few people in the comments. Crypto's with us. He's saying Xavi in. Not sure that Xavi is going to come to the City ground, but you never know. David is in the comments saying in response to someone asking for Sean Dyche that we've already got the Australian version of that, potentially. Damon says, I think he's going to get more time. We don't need another knee-jerk reaction, but this can't go on for much longer. Clive Blatherwick says, Ange has got to go. FFTV Monk is with us, says, Ange should never have been appointed. Thought when Nuno left, we got an upgrade and not to go backwards. Michael Lane says, as soon as we went 1-0 down, the game plan goes out of the window. Why can't he pick his strongest available 11, play the same formation? Formations are changing every match or multiple times in a match. And that kind of, Andrew, was kind of what I was trying to say then about what does it say to the players? I mean, where are you on that? I mean, I kind of agree with myself that, sometimes it's a horses for courses game. And I like it. I like variation in terms of thinking about the opposition and how you can get the best result against that opposition. But then there's also the case says, look, just pick your best 11 players, get them on the pitch, play them week in and week out until they fall over, especially at this time in the season. I mean, Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's been quite bright for us, although he's finishing, still needs to improve. He starts on the bench again. Again, I've been calling for Amari Hutchinson to get a start. Thought he was bright when he came on against Sunderland. Obviously can't play in the European games as well. Where are you on the kind of players and formations, and should it be the case of like just get the same 11 on the pitch and get them playing so that it all comes together rather quicker?
So let's play devil's advocate on this. I think that there's two trains of thought. One is Clough's old adage that you let the opposition worry about you, not the other way around. If you've got what you think is a strong 11 that gives other teams, reasons to adjust to your style of play, then you should be doing that. That, goes back to this whole consistency. Pick your strongest 11, let them learn a system together, let them get good at that system together, and eventually the elite will rise. And those players, if they are as good as we think they are, will win you games, or at least will get you into games where you stand a chance of winning. To the other point, and that pragmatism that we were asking, and let's all remember as well, you said earlier that Newcastle were 15th. Now, that 15 was, a little bit of a lie. I think they're a better team than that 15th place suggests. But
some might say the same about us.
Exactly. But you're playing a team that, hasn't produced the levels that is expected from them this season. So you're going to St James's Park. It's going to be a difficult game. You had maybe little bits of success. I guess we haven't had success with 3 at the back, but you have a system that could potentially work and hit teams on the break. I think I saw in one of the chat groups that I'm on that there was potentially a thought of, we had Dylan Backwell on the bench. We had, Amari Hutchinson on the bench. We had McAtee on the bench. You've got Pace on the bench. You've got Hudson-Odoi, one of the quickest players in the team, on the bench. If you could hold them off for 60 minutes and then make those substitutions and go at the game like we did at Anfield last season, and make the game about that last 30 minutes. Just stay in the game for 60 minutes and then win it in that last 30. There's an argument for that, and I get that. The problem was Newcastle scored that goal on 58 minutes. Now, none of us will ever know if, Ange was going to make substitutions on that 60-minute mark, but there is an argument for it. I get that. But it didn't work out that way. And at the end of the day, that score after 90-something minutes says that we lost 2-0. So whatever he tried for the wrong, or, however the game played out, it did not work. So I can see both sides. I'm still a believer that if you have a strong core 11, and you look at what Nuno was trying to do with the players that we understand he wanted to bring in, was have that core 11, 12, that 15, 16 that are your match day squad, and then players that are willing to play that support role and come in. We don't have that luxury. We have, a squad of 25 people, 20 of which want to start every week. So I get it. But that's where Ange is supposed to be the all-seer. He's supposed to be the one that's able to make that decision. And today, it didn't work. Whether he got it right or wrong is kind of redundant because it didn't work. We lost.
Sponsored by Shipstones is in the comments. Says Mr. M needs to accept responsibility because this is a poor appointment, and Michael Lane is right to point out that credit to Ryan Yates is due. 100 appearances in the Premier League for him today. 3-star Reds, Marinakis needs to make the change. He agrees with Crypto that Xavi is the better option. Forest want Glasner on the rumour pages, but that's a non-starter. Well, I've heard from my sources that Forest did in fact try to get Glasner and tried to get him twice and were rejected both times. I think this was before the Postecoglou appointment or before they even sacked Nuno when they were doing the rounds trying to sort of line up the replacement. My ears have been telling me that they went after Glasner and he didn't want to come. So I don't know if that's true or not. Paul Hutchinson's asking who would you bring in? Well, we're going to get to that later on, Paul. For the moment, we're sticking with the Newcastle game. So we do go 1-0 down. Ange, I'm just going to stick with you for the moment. I'll bring Bruce in a second. So the goal was a little bit of a contentious one to a certain degree. And Bruno comes in on Gibbs White. Are you blaming Gibbs White there? Should he have been doing better with the ball, get it up? Was he trying to be fancy and do a flick or so? I mean, at first glance, I thought it was a foul. On reflection, and now I've seen it back and slow mode it and everything else, I can see that Bruno does get the ball. He did go in hard on Gibbs White. It wouldn't have surprised me had the ref blown for a foul there because I've seen them given, but he didn't give it and it was never going to be overturned. So who's at fault there? Gibbs White, maybe Sels. Should he be doing better with that? It went down straight through his throat, didn't it?
I think. And we'll talk about this with the penalty as well. I think communication on the football pitch is vitally important. If Gibbs White knows that somebody is tight to him, his teammates should be communicating that to him. There's this great shout, man on, or someone's close. If someone's said that to him and he still tries to do his nice little flick, then it's on him. But it still doesn't mean that it wasn't a foul. I'm slightly different to you. I think, and we saw this kind of later on in the game, that there were fouls being given for far less than that in those last 20 minutes of the game. I think it's a foul. I think as much as he wins the ball, he still goes in too hard. If it was like shoulder was almost at like chin high and it's completely flattened Gibbs White. If it were the other way around and we got that given against us, maybe I'd feel a bit aggrieved, but I could also accept that is a foul 8 times out of 10 in the Premier League. You're right. Once it goes to VAR, there's not a chance in hell they're going to overturn that. But I thought it was a foul. I think the game kind of spun on that moment. It was a great finish. I don't think Sels is at fault for the goal in terms of being able to stop the shot once it came in, but we see this time and again with Gibbs White, and maybe just someone needs to take him to one side, have a quiet word in his ear and says, when you've got your back to goal and there's players around you, stop fucking around and just do the right thing. Just do the safe thing once in a while, because it's costing us games. Once that foul isn't given and the passage of play that goes from that, it costs us a goal and ultimately costs us a game, because once that goal went in, we were never coming back.
It's not often on this podcast that I'm not the first one to make the first F-bomb. Thank you very much, Andrew Cove. Brucey, the goal was coming, I think. I don't know what you think about that, but they had chances. I kind of felt like Newcastle got the team talk from Eddie Howe. They clicked up a gear or two, and we were a little bit deeper again in that second half. We'd gained a bit of momentum in the first, as we talked about, but they certainly started brightly, and they had chances before they scored to grab a goal. Was it any surprise to you when they did score?
No, for a few different reasons, but I expect them to score at least one today, anyways. But yeah, it was coming. They were definitely starting to push us back on the foul. At first glance, I definitely thought it was a foul too, but when you go back and look at it, I agree with Greg. It's not a foul. But to his point again, you've seen him call, right? Good shot, well taken. But yeah, it was coming. But on Morgan, I thought he was okay today. That I don't necessarily put on him. To a bigger issue around this entire game, there was no outlet the entire match. There was nobody ever available or making a run with somebody to get that pass out. So when Newcastle, as they did all game, collapsed on the ball, there was nobody available to pass. There was never an outlet. So it's hard to point at Morgan and say, why are you trying to be cute, or why are you trying to be fancy, when he looks up and there's not a red shirt around him. So no, I don't really blame Morgan for that. It's easy target, I guess, but in this game, in this match, and that how it planned out, I don't point the finger at him. I think that was just
held the ball up though. Yeah, invite contact, go down, get a free kick.
It's not
Why
his
he
style,
didn't-
though, is it?
There's ways to manage that situation, and that
Is it because he's always trying to make something happen? It's almost like his natural instinct is is such a dynamic player that when the ball comes to him, he plays on the half turn, he plays on the flick. You know, he kind of beats up the man with that flick and then takes it over his head or goes around him. You know, and when it comes off, it's great to see, but it hasn't been coming off this season. And there was that stat, and I was saying to my dad as well when we were watching the game together. You know, no one has given the ball away more than Morgan Gibbs White, and he gives it away in dangerous areas. Whether he doesn't intend to, but you know, it's, like you just said, someone needs to have a damn good chat with him and say, "Listen, you're costing us at the moment. The flicks and the tricks are being done in dangerous areas." There was a moment in the first half when he tried something as well on the edge, more or less on the edge of our area, and actually was lucky to get the foul against him. And I even screamed at the TV, "What the fuck are you doing?" You know, in that portion of the pitch, you know, we couldn't get out. Going back to the first half, although we grew into the game, you know, there was a spell when we really just could not get out. And Newcastle were really penning us back, and we were trying to play the ball out. And every time the ball just went long, I mean, there was one moment, I think, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Endoy that passed it back to Sels. If it wasn't him, forgive me. But Sels had to scramble to clear it from going out for a corner. And the ball just flew up to like the halfway line, just short, chested down by a Newcastle player with no one around him. And they came on the attack again. We just couldn't get the ball clear. There was no outlet like you've just touched on. And that was a really concerning thing. So I guess the question is, when we're talking about Ange and the style of football, we're talking about what is happening to this team is, you know, if he's the one that's making these choices. He's the one that's setting the team up, picking the players to play a certain way. And so therefore you say, well, look, if we can't get out and we can't create anything, then what do you expect to happen? Eventually, a good team like Newcastle at home, they're going to come on top of you more and more and more. And that's what we saw. So although the goal was a well-taken long-range effort, I guess you could say, you know, it was coming with the chances they had. And we just couldn't lay a glove on them in the second half. I don't think we had any chances of note at any point that you could say, God, you know, if we just put that one away, we could have really got back into it. There was the Callum Hudson-Odoi moment when he went on that run in the second half, and Igor Jesus almost got in his way, but it was a tame left-footed shot that didn't do anything, and there was a tame Nico shot as well that just went straight at Nick Pope, and there was just nothing on their goal that caused them any problems. And then I'm looking at other games that are happening, and it feels like everyone else is scrapping. Everyone else is like, you know, Burnley. I didn't see the game in full, but you know, they're going behind to was Everton, wasn't it? Was it Everton? I can't remember. They're going behind, and then they're scrapping, and they get back into it to a certain degree and scoring a goal. Yeah, Villa, wasn't it? Yeah. So you know, and putting up a fight of it, it just feels like the fight in us is kind of slowly but surely leaving the building. We had highlights definitely against Betis, definitely against Burnley. You know, things that make you think, okay, this is actually working. This is actually really, really going in the right direction. But then you see the game against Sunderland where, again, we should have scored, but we end up losing the game. The Michelin game was a disaster. And then by the point we get to today's game and we're going to Newcastle, it's almost becoming too much of an ask. It's such a big ask. So, Andrew, when we eventually do concede the second through a penalty, it's almost like just put us out of our misery. Let's just go, because you know I was kind of trying to hope with 10 minutes to go, we're 1-0 down, if we can just hit them on the counter. There was no counter. There was nothing happening. Any complaints for you on the Anderson penalty? I mean, it was clear cut, wasn't it?
Yeah, no complaints on that. And like I said a moment ago, I think if someone gives him a shout that there's a player close by, he puts that in Rosette. So again, I don't know if that's a Milenkovic or someone at the back that should be commanding that space and that passage of play. Anderson always likes to take a touch. We know how gifted and talented he is on the ball, so I get why he thinks he's capable of doing that. But I wonder if he makes that same decision if he knows that player is so tight to him. So yeah, it's a clear-cut penalty. There's no arguments on that. My only hope was maybe it happened outside the box, but that first replay confirmed exactly what we all feared. Going back to the point on us chasing the game and that last 10 minutes, I think I jokingly said on about 80 minutes in our group chat that Newcastle were going to win 2-0 and it was going to be a breakaway goal on the 85th or 88th minute. And then literally 2 minutes later, Anderson gives away the penalty and the game's done. At that point, game over. Like, we weren't getting back into it at 1-0. 2-0 was just literally one of many final nails in the coffin for that particular result.
When we go 1-0 down, Bruce, how were we going to get back into that game? What was it going to be? I'm probably asking the $1 million question here, because I was thinking we haven't laid a glove on them. We've gone 1-0 down. We now need to score. So he makes the changes and changes the formation. So he's being proactive, right? He's gone to a back four. He's gone back to a 4-2-3-1. Hutchinson, who's come on to go on the wing, now comes into number 10. Back was on. Hudson-Odoi is on. Eagle Jesus is on. Gibbs White drops deeper. So, okay, fair enough. Tick in the right box. You've made a formation change to try and affect the game. But it was just disappointing, wasn't it? That he did that. And again, we just didn't seem to have any kind of questions to ask Newcastle. Once we gone 1-0 down, will you resign that was that?
No, it's the hope that always kills you, right? The first half, we showed a lot of heart, and that gave me a little bit of hope. And even at 1-0 down, yeah, it was still there. I still had some hope that we would nick one back, even though we had really shown nothing, to prove that. But we have enough players on the pitch that can have a wonder goal, and even Nico, as he's proven before, can pop one in as well. So yeah, I had a slight hope despite my pessimism lately. But I would say it wasn't extremely high. It was more maybe, probably not, but maybe. But yeah, we had shown nothing, and again, like I said earlier, I felt like the subs were made at the right point. I felt like he was making positive moves to get us back in the game. We just showed nothing when we got on there on attacking front. I mean, Newcastle, it's like they read Ange's game plan coming in and knew exactly what we're doing and shut us down before we even had a chance.
They've got players in their team that are very, very good. Bruno Guimaraes, their captain, their leader. He's a very, very good player, and he always seems to turn up against us and cause us problems. So it's no surprise to me that he's central to their win with scoring the goal and winning the penalty. We're going to get in some more Ange Postecoglou chat. Let's do a break. I think we need one.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
The perfect cheesy mix with Stu Freestone, our sponsor in York. 10% off when you quote Talking Reds. Davey T's in the comments, who's a Newcastle fan. Thanks for tuning in and joining us, Dave. Very welcome. He says Dan Burn filling in at left back was their weak link, but we never really tested him. You know what, Dave? I just don't think that we've got the winger, or didn't have the winger on the pitch, or the tools on the pitch, or the style of play, or the outcomes to test him at the moment. Dan Burn, if I'm honest with you, has developed, I think, into quite a good footballer. I was quite scathing when he got put into the England squad, because I just don't think Dan Burn is ready for England. But he's actually developed into a really good centre back. He's played left back a lot for Newcastle prior to kind of getting a centre back shirt, I think. So fair play and credit to Dan Burn, but we didn't test him. We didn't test any of them. Ange Postecoglou at Nottingham Forest had played 7 matches so far, and we all know there's no wins. So when he comes into the club, guys, we know that he's got Arsenal as his first game within a day or two. And as much as we've talked about striking that off the record, it's still there on it. But then there's a set of fixtures that line up quite nicely for him, guys, with the away trip to Swansea, the away trip to Burnley, and then the away trip to Real Betis, which, was his first outing in the Europa League for us, the trophy that he won last season, followed by your first home match at home to Sunderland, quickly followed by another home match at home to FC Midtjylland, who, with the greatest respect, they were not fancy to win at Forest. I was listening to Reese on Red Side of the Trent a little bit earlier, so this is from him, but he said that they were 8-1 to win. I mean, if a team comes to any club and they're 8-1 to win, that means that they're not really particularly fancied. So the reason why I'm saying all this is that Ange had the fixtures there in front of him when he first came in to kind of get the ball rolling, the new manager bounce, to get things up and running. And we would not be having this conversation. The fact that he's performed the way that he's performed and the players have done what they've done means that we are in the shit, because he now goes into the international break. If he stays in the job, having to face Chelsea, Porto, and an away trip to Bournemouth, who everyone knows, we're going to really struggle against. 5-0 defeat last season and all the rest of it. So I guess I'm going to ask you guys now where you're at on Ange Postecoglou. Bruce, I'm going to come to you first, all right, on this. The context has to be kind of put down as well. Those that were listening after Mitchell know that I was wobbling. I mean, I've been trying to be level-headed, and I've tried the whole time saying, look, let's just remember it's been 3 weeks. As it is now, it's been just 7 games. He's had limited time with the players. Things take time, all right? Things take time. But ultimately, we are where we are. What are your thoughts now on Ange Postecoglou?
I think I've seen enough. We seem to be getting worse. We seem to be degressing, not progressing at the moment. He's try to implement some style, and now he's going the other way. He's scrambling at the moment, and that's never a good thing. When he first came in, I'm on record, I wasn't a fan, but that's not why I'm saying this at the moment. I trusted Marinakis. I trusted that he felt like this was a step in the right direction for our club. I gave it time, but when we see what we've seen recently, and I don't know how you can be any other way. Honestly, it's
just 7 games, Bruce. That's not enough time, is it? I'm going to play devil's advocate. 7 games of football. It's just not enough time. Surely he's been in the job 3 weeks. He's got a load of new players that are trying to find their feet as well. He's got players from outside of the UK that are trying to adapt to the Premier League and to the English game in general. 7 games surely is enough time, right?
Yes and no, right? I go back to some of the new signings that you see all around the Premier League that are adapting so quickly and jumping in so quickly, and it's hard to say, well, just give them time. It's gonna work when we just see our team getting worse and worse every week. Listen, we saw some bright moments. Of course, Betis. We saw a good half against Burnley, but when we're getting smashed by Swansea and Thingy FC, it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And even after the Sunderland match, which honestly, the players were flat. The players looked bad, but the players, they look like they put effort in today. At the very least, they look like they're playing hard today. It's just not working. Like I don't know how to sum it up. Just that here's a cherry on top. It's not working, and it's getting worse. A move needs to happen.
Sometimes things don't work. Sometimes, there's just no cohesion. Andrew, are the players playing for him, do you think? Were they ever playing for him, do you think?
I think that's what struck me very early on. Yes, there's that conversation about it being a very different style of football from what Nuno was trying to establish at the club, even in like those first few games of trying to be more possession-based to kind of what we were used to before, to how the perception of how Ange sets the team up. I don't think I've ever seen, that first off against Betis, which I didn't actually watch, I was working, but everything I've seen suggests it was exactly kind of what we'd hoped it would be. There's been flashes here or there where they have responded for him, but I said this to you guys earlier, just before we went on air. I think you take elite players and you play them, over 90 minutes for enough periods of time that you're going to get those flashes anyway, because regardless of necessarily what the coach is trying to instill in them, good players will eventually gel and they'll find ways to make situations work within, periods of games. I've not seen anything that suggests to me, not necessarily they're not being respectful. I think there was a tweet that I think was it Craig Hope from the Daily Mail put out earlier that the players didn't respond to Ange after the game, which was a complete lie. They did. They went over and all that sort of thing. I think they're being respectful. I think they're trying to instill it, but I don't think either Ange isn't communicating it well enough. It's not clear enough. It's just so big a leap from what we were doing before, or they're just not into it. It's the wrong group of players at this time for that style of football to implement quickly. And yeah, there's an argument that it needs time. But look at our next 3 games. We've talked before about, there's no easy games in the Premier League. Our next 3 games are all very, very difficult games. So after those 3 games, do we then reset again and say, well, we didn't really expect to get anything out of those 3 games again because they're difficult opposition? How long do you keep giving the guy a pass? How long do you give the players time to finally put in a performance when you're playing good teams week in, week out? You said earlier, he had his chance. He had Sunderland at home. He had Thingy at home in the Euros. They're games that we should be not necessarily winning or even drawing, but we should have been performing better. And I think that's the key for me.
The games we shouldn't be losing.
It's
the games we shouldn't be losing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's performances. That's what I'm saying. They don't look like they're into games. It doesn't look like they believe what he is trying to instill. And for me, that says that maybe he never had them. But for me at the moment, I just don't think he's got them as a team. I don't think they're on board. It's easy to say it in the press. It's easy to be respectful. They're not going to come out in a press conference and say, yeah, Gaffer's not giving us what we need to be able to perform and win games. Of course, they're not going to say that. They're going to be respectful. They're going to say exactly what the media expects them to say. But if that's the case, then show it on the pitch. And they're not doing that. They're not doing that at all. Yes, in little periods of time, but you'd expect that. Games going, ebbs and flows and waves. They're going to click once in a while. A broken watch is right twice a day. It's going to work every now and then, even if it's by luck or chance. So, yeah, for me, I don't know that they were ever on board, and I don't think anything's changed.
I think even Ange said it in the Michelin press conferences the other day when Morgan was speaking highly of him beforehand. He came out and said, well, Ange said, well, what do you expect him to say? I'm not trying to diss Morgan, but this is what footballers are supposed to say. And I kind of like sometimes he's straight talking. He kind of does give it quite nicely and sometimes, but he's getting a lot of flack tonight about making it all about himself. And I don't know that I subscribe to that. I mean, I've dipped in and out of some of the interviews portions that he's done. I mean, he's being asked about himself and can he turn it around? And is there going to be a chance for him to, move forward with the club? So he's being asked about himself and he can only answer, I guess, he's saying things like, it's hard and what's wrong with that? Nothing in life, or not many things in life come to you easily. And if it means it's a fight, then it's a fight. And I'm up for the fight. I don't mind that. But then he kind of caveats that with, well, I could have been sat on the couch. I didn't have to take the job. It's almost like, all right, mate, don't make it sound like we should be grateful to have you here. Ultimately, at the moment, we're not. I wasn't keen on him before he was appointed, but I am a glass half full kind of guy. Maybe that's one of my negative qualities, but I want to get behind the club and want to get behind the team, and I want to get behind the manager in charge and try and buy into as much as I can about what he wants to do. And I just hope that the players, are doing that. Someone last week on the pod put up, the players aren't playing for him. And I did kind of pull that apart a little bit because I just didn't see the evidence at that point that the players weren't playing for him, because I was really impressed with the Betis first half. And even the second half against Betis, when it wasn't as good, but we tried to be resilient. And in the end, sometimes in games away in Europe, you're trying to hold on and they just come undone at the end. If we'd come away with a win, would have just been flying. There were moments in the Burnley game as well, and the chances that we had. But again, this is my next point, Bruce. How much now am I and others like me making excuses for Ange? Because he had it last season at Spurs. I haven't got the figures in front of me, folks, but you can all go and find it. I think it's something like he's lost the last X amount of games in the Premier League, or hasn't won at all really since X date. The record is really poor. And everyone says, but he has so many.
49 is the number.
Yeah.
30 wins out of the, or 30 losses out of the last 49.
Exactly. But he had such bad injury record. But he's coming to Forest and he's lost Murillo and Ola Aina and now Zinchenko and Luiz. It feels like it's kind of excuse central for this guy, when actually, he's got other good players at his disposal. Forest, that is. I mean, I'm not talking about Spurs situation. It feels like there's been excuses after excuses. You're just not having it, Bruce, are you, anymore? You want him out the door. Do you think the club should sack him tonight?
Yeah. I mean, why wait is my opinion. Yeah, it's I went back and then looked at, from January till I think it was last week when I looked at it, but I mean, he's actually had a worse record than Amorim, who everybody's screaming for his head as well. In Spurs and us in the league, he's been atrocious, which is part of the reason I wasn't really too keen on him coming in. And to fire Tuck's point, in the comments, where do we know our best team? It's not my job to find out. I couldn't tell you our best team. I mean, I have opinion, but that's why he's paid millions of dollars to figure that out, and he obviously hasn't. And I feel like 3 weeks is probably long enough to figure that out. I get wanting to keep players fresh and playing in multiple competitions, but we're still early in the season. Form something first. Find a team, stick to them, rotate when needed, and when players get injured. But until then, put your best players out there, or players that you feel are the best players that fit your system. And he hasn't done that. Hence the constant rotation, hence the constant change. That's why there's no cohesion up front. It's, in my opinion, but it's not been pretty. No, to your point, I'm not hearing it.
Gordon's in the comments. He's not very happy with me. He said, "You pulled me apart, Greg, 2 weeks ago for telling him to fuck off." I think I might have done. 2 weeks ago, he'd been at the club a week. I mean, you can hardly blame. I think that was a bit much, Gordon, if I'm honest with you. I'm going to kind of defend myself a little bit. I think here and now, you might be sort of sitting there quite pretty saying, "Well, I told you so." And you might have a point, Gordon. And I'm not saying you're wrong. And I love the fact that you watch Talking Reds, and I'm grateful for you being here. We've all got opinions, and you've got yours, and I respect that. And it could well be. I mean, more people agree with you than not. And I don't even know what my position is, guys. I'm trying to make what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying so hard to be the counterbalance to all the shit that's being chucked at Ange Postecoglou. I'm trying so hard to try and be the devil's advocate and say, well, but it's only 7 games, or but this, but that, but everything. But I'm wobbling, and I don't know really which way I'm going at the moment. It's really, really difficult because I'm normally quite forthright with how I think and feel. Maybe that's the problem. I've been forthright with an opinion in the past and got pelters for it, and actually I don't like it. I've got to be honest with you. I'll put an opinion out there, and when you get pelters, it doesn't feel very nice. You start to doubt yourself, folks. You start to think, "Oh God, I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that for?" But so I kind of think I'm trying to be measured with how I'm feeling. I'm trying to kind of keep my powder dry, but I'm agreeing with all the stuff that you guys are saying about it's not going to work. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It's a bad fit. I see all of that. But at the same time, there's the hope in me that says, you know what, 2 weeks international break to get into the players now, for something to happen, something to change, and then to go out against Chelsea and get a win at home. But maybe it's the hope that kills you, Andrew Cove. Maybe I'm just too much of that glass half full guy at the moment, with that, that never-ending hope that it's going to turn around. Maybe I also, if I'm honest with you, maybe it's the loyalty that I have in me. I'm quite a loyal person, and so I kind of feel, I don't know why I feel this way. Maybe I feel like a little bit of loyalty to Ange at the moment because he's come in and he's come in and taken the job. I felt really bad for him on Thursday night, guys. Having all your home fans, a stadium full of people. I wasn't one of them. I've said that before. Screaming, you're getting sacked in the morning. I mean, what does that do to a person when they're stood there and there's nowhere to go? And yes, you can say to me, well, he's well paid and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't take away what that can do to a person. And I felt really kind of like shocked that he was getting that. So maybe I'm just being a bit soft in my old age. 51 in 10 days' time, guys. Maybe I'm getting old and feeling soft and all the rest of it. Maybe we need to get that hard edge back. I don't know. Andrew, am I being too soft? Do I need to just make a decision now and call it either way?
First of all, never apologise for being glass half full. I literally have that written into my bio on my Facebook account. I think you make a really good point about, at the end of the day, Ange is a human being. We're all human beings and we're allowed to have opinions. We're allowed to feel any way we want. There's no hard rules on this. I think it was a shame how it kind of deteriorated against MT Midtjylland on Thursday with the crowd chanting. That's not a good look for him, for us, for anyone. It was a shame how it all, transpired. He said in his interview, and I remember watching this very closely, that 3.5 minute long interview that he had after the game on Thursday, where he was talking about, the players need to keep their heads up and keep focused and try and stay positive. And the entire duration of that 3.5 minutes, he's looking at his feet. I mean, he looks like a broken man. And of course, that's sad. You don't want anyone, and I'll be careful, Alfred, you don't want anyone to feel bad, right? But at the same time, if you take the person out of the equation, and I know that wasn't the direction of the question, but you take him out of the equation as a person and just what is his job? What is he there to do? What is he getting paid for? And he's not doing it. You've got a right to voice your opinion. There's levels to, how you can do that. And like I said, I think maybe we did cross a little bit of a line with the abuse that he got directly. And then the Nuno chant was, again, wildly misguided, in my opinion. But at the same time, we care about our club. We were talking about this before and at the beginning of the pod. We love our club. We sing this great song after we score goals by the Righteous Brothers. It's you've lost that loving feeling. It feels like that's what's happening at the moment. And people are frustrated. This was supposed to be one of our greatest ever years. We qualified for Europe after 30 years of being out of the competition. We just finished top 7, one of the greatest seasons in Premier League history. To see it unravel the way it has, part of this is on Nuno, and I know we've covered that, so we don't need to kind of go, reopen our old wounds. Part of this is on Nuno, but part of it's on Ange. Part of it's on Evangelos Marinakis. There's a lot of people that are complicit in why the club is the way it is. And the people that lose out on it ultimately are the fans, because we're the ones that pay our money. We go through the turnstiles. We watch the game. We want our club to win. We want our club to succeed and be successful. It's other people that have the agency on how well we do. So when it's not happening and we can see why that's happening and why it's, unraveling the way it is, we're going to voice our opinions. We're fully entitled to. We pay our, I was going to say £20, but I think £50 on Thursday for the Europa game. They're entitled to an opinion. Like I said, there's lines, and we can get into a whole hour-long debate on what the line is. But I get why they're frustrated, Greg. This is the club that we love, and we're seeing what should have been our greatest ever season, or one of our greatest ever seasons, deteriorate, faster than ever. So yeah, I get it. It's unfortunate. He's a human being. I genuinely feel sorry for him as a human being, but as a manager, I think that's a separate conversation.
Can I ask a question real quick? I mean,
Yeah.
Is it possible to come back from those kind of chants? I mean, genuinely, if he goes out next week and win, is that the fix-all? I mean, is it possible to come back from a chant like that?
It's a good question, and the answer I think is possibly no. I mean, Gordon was in the comments again saying that I'm saying it's working. I never said it's working. It's not working at the moment. All I'm saying is I'm living in the hope that it could still work. That's what I'm still kind of like clinging on to that it could still work. We could still kind of like come together, get the cohesion, because I do believe it takes time. But no, I think maybe when you get that chance that a lot of people had made their minds up before he entered the building, and now they are just reinforced completely. There were people that were perhaps in the middle that have gone over to that side, and there's only one or two left that are like, hang on, guy, come on, this isn't going to do anyone any good. And I don't know if, what does it need for Ange to turn it around? He probably needs to win the next 3 games, I should imagine. He needs to win against Chelsea. He needs to win against Porto. If he went away and got a decent draw at Bournemouth, I think that would suit. I think if he got those 3 games and was able to put positive performances in and get positive results, then I think that would go a long way to kind of settling the noise down. But ultimately, that's a big ask. And 3-Star Reds said, I'm not sure if I showed this before, but this one is on Marinakis and Edu. Since the Edu appointment, the playbook has been ripped to pieces. And I think there's something in that. No one saw this coming. This was supposed to be our season, as you've just touched on. This was supposed to be so different to how it is now. And we find ourselves, still only 7 Premier League games into the season. But we're nearly a quarter of the way through? My maths isn't very good. Something like that. We're a few games away from being a quarter of the way through. And we're 1 point above the bottom 3. And here come the stats, guys, that pretty much put the nail in the coffin. You've all seen it. Everyone's seen this on X. Nottingham Forest, Premier League under Ange Postecoglou. For those that can't see it. Points, 1 in total, ranked 20th in the Premier League. Defeats, 3, ranked 20th. Goals, 1, ranked 20th. Expected goals against, that's 7.72, ranked 20th. Clean sheets, 0, ranked 20th. Shots on target face, 22, 19th. Errors leading to shots, 5, 20th. Conceded from set pieces, 4, 19th. Shot conversion rate, 2%, 20th. I mean, landscape is the stat man, and I always like to try and add a little bit more context to it. But when you look at those stats, Andrew, and you take into account everything we've been talking about, I mean, Christ, that's fucking awful, isn't it?
It does not paint a pretty picture. I think some of those aren't on him. You know, he sets the team up in a certain way, but players still, you know, should be better than some of those stats suggest. We talked about Chris Wood's XG imbalance and that re-equalizing, and that's gone so far, you know, off the chart in the opposite direction that no one anticipated him being quite as poor. That chance that he had last week, where, you know, that header at the far post, last season he scores that in the blink of an eye. So not all of these stats are on Ange. I will give him that, but the points, the defeats, they're on him. He sets a team up to go out and get points and win games. He's not doing it. So they're on him. Clean sheets, Matz Sels is, again, it looks like a shadow of his former self. Now, Ange, he's not going to suddenly play, you know, Gunn or John in place of Matz Sels. Matz Sels is our number one, but if Matz Sels isn't keeping clean sheets...
I think you're right. Let me interrupt you. Although today, Sels pulled off some good saves. Could have been 5-0.
He's not
been 5-0
command of his defense, the people in front of him. It's not just like the shots, which we know he's good at, and that's a fair point. But it's how that back line's set up. You know, it's not just a defense; it's a keeper and the 4 people in front of him, and how he kind of operates that system. And it's just not looked as secure. Now, the transition of managers, the new style, I get it, but it's still a fact.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Milenkovic has looked the player that he is. I think Sels has looked shaky. I think he's kept him in his job. If we'd lost 4-5-0, I think he had to have been sacked tonight. Yeah. I think that the absolute swell of, I mean, it was pure hatred and vitriol and emotion in the stadium on Thursday night. And I think, in fairness to the travelling fans, I know that the chant came up from what Steve Battlematch has said in our group who was there. It was predominantly Newcastle fans singing Getting Sacked in the Morning with 1 or 2 Forest voices, but largely the team were being supported by the fans and they were trying to get behind the team. There's a few more comments I want to put up in that have come in. Here we go. Ant Gale says, panic is the worst place to act from. If he was fired now, it would be historic in its shortness. Maybe. That would be the worst thing. How about we get our players back from the physio? I mean, no Zinchenko, no Douglas Luiz. I think they're 2 key important players for Ange in this system that he plays. They all. I don't know if it's an understatement to say that they potentially transform this team.
And Ola Aina.
And Aina's not played for him, but I mean, you know, Nico is trying to put a shift in on. One game is left back, the other game is right back. I mean, he's all over the shop. You know, will he be allowed to have that luxury of going into Chelsea with his? We're being told that Zinchenko and Douglas Luiz were going to be out just as a precaution because they just feeling something rather than it being anything that's happened. It's almost like we're resting them and making sure that they don't get properly injured. At the moment, they're kind of half injured, if you like, at best. Will he get a chance with them? Yeah, Phil says Clough was sacked after 44 days at Leeds. We know that, and this will be shorter than that. Alice McLeish got 7 games in charge at Forest when that unravelled. It's not unprecedented that managers last a really short amount of time at a club. Sometimes an owner turns around and has buyer's regret and thinks, shit, you know what? What have I done? You know, and I think that we have to look at Mr. Marinakis. As much as I've said really lovely things about him, because I really think he's great, I do feel that we have to lay the blame largely at Mr. Marinakis. And I do think as well, and I'm going to come out and say it, whether this is controversial or not, I don't know, guys. I do think he hired Ange Postecoglou because he's Greek. I know he's an Australian. I think that's the reason why he did it. I think Mr. Marinakis is a very passionate, patriotic man. And there's nothing wrong with that because I feel the same way about being English. And I think he felt very proud to give Ange his award for being the first Greek manager or something to win a European trophy. I think he loved that. And I think that has swayed him. And I think he sees this is one of my kindred. This is one of my brethren. And I wanted him at my club. And I think that that's a big part of why he got the job. And I might not be saying anything here that other people aren't thinking. And maybe you all think I'm crazy and think, well, you can't say things like that. Well, I am saying it. I think that is a big reason as to why he's kind of overlooked a lot of things and thought, I want him in my club. I'm not making excuses, Gordon. We're just trying to be balanced, yeah? So, listen, I'm happy to hear your comments, but, like I said, we're not making excuses. We're trying to be balanced. We're trying to kind of like caveat and have a conversation, have a debate about everything on both sides. Like I said, I put this stat up, which is damning. I'll put it back up again. It's damning. And I'm not defending that. I just said to you, it's effing awful. A moment ago, it is absolutely horrific. Okay, we're nearly out of time. Guys, Ange Postecoglou gets sacked tonight, tomorrow morning. Who's coming in? Who do you want in? Who realistically are Forest going to get? And is that a reason why they might not sack him? Because there's no fucker available that they might get. Because you can forget your bottom dollar. Glasner ain't coming. Silver ain't coming. Iraola ain't coming. None of those are coming. So, Brucey, who do you want? Who's going to come?
You said Silva's not coming, but I
you think
around that that would be that's who I would want at least. But I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen the list. I really haven't, I guess, paid much mind to that. I just it's he'd be great. He wouldn't when same thing when Nuno was sacked. But yeah, it's bad now. When I saw the list, I saw Sean Dyche, and for the record, I don't like Sean Dyche. I hated the Everton-led Sean Dyche. That was my least favorite team to watch, least favorite team to. But when I saw his name on the list, I was like, it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be too bad, So at this point, Silva would be my choice. But again, I'll trust Marinakis in this decision.
Gordon says he's quarter Greek and he should be given the job because he's going to do a far better job. I'll write in, Gordon, and I'd give you the job now. I think you do a great job. Andrew Cove, who do you want in next?
I think I saw a statistic that Marinakis has never appointed a manager that's currently in work. We're always kind of taking from the pool of who's available, not who's necessarily the best. I don't know if that's true or not. So I'll give you one from each pool. I think if you look at the managers that are currently available, I don't know that he'd come to us, but if we wanted to shore ourselves up at the back, and I'm going to get absolute pelters for this, but Gareth Southgate's not in work at the moment, and he's been pretty successful. So maybe there's a conversation there. We've got some very talented young English players in the squad. I think he'd, get the best out of those. He'd make us difficult to beat. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a curveball. If we're taking people who are currently in work, I know we've talked before. Silva's in like the last year of his contract. I don't think he's happy at Fulham. I think if you're ever going to take a swing at a manager that's currently in work, pay a little bit of compo and get the best man for the job, it's Marco Silva.
Okay. A few names doing the rounds in the comments. I mean, Southgate's an interesting one. He's been linked with Man United job, and he's kind of hesitant to take that because he's not sure to get the time. I wonder how many people would be hesitant to come to Forest with the backdrop of this season, with the whole Nuno saga that's turned into an Ange Postecoglou saga that's turned into so much media attention. How many people would want that job? I don't know. One name that is being mentioned is Sean Dyche. Phil Stone says he prefers Southgate to Dyche himself. Sean Dyche, I mean, look, I don't think we're at Sean Dyche turf yet. I kind of the other day was almost talking myself into being excited about the idea of Sean Dyche, which is really bad. But is it really bad? Because, I mean, again, I'm trying to do both sides of the coin before you guys will come at me and hate me. I mean, he obviously lives in the city and knows the club and was at the club and clearly has an affinity. And I think he covets the job massively. We know his style of football would be to stabilize things. And I think that that's potentially what we need. Whether we're there yet, Paul Morley's talked about, we're not at Dyche time yet. If we don't appoint someone for another 2 months and it all goes to shit, then we're potentially at Dyche time then, because the pool of managers that might be available now won't be available then potentially. So is Sean Dyche the right call to make now? I don't know. Brendan Rodgers, Davey T in the comments mentions him. Again, I'm just not sure about Brendan Rodgers. I mean, yeah, I like the idea of Nick the Great from the Chippy, as Tricky Mickey says. I think if that's the going criteria these days. But this is a nice one I quite like from Ben, who says Liam Rosinia doing a great job. I think he's at Strasbourg, isn't he? Would be a big risk. Ex-Derby, it doesn't bother me at all. The Derby connection doesn't bother me one iota. It really, really doesn't. But you know what? He's a good up and coming manager, but I think it would be too much of a risk for me. For me personally, I just don't know. There you go. This is how frazzled my brain is at the moment, guys. I just don't know, because I just feel like, you know, it would be so crucial an appointment that Marinakis seems to like to have the next guy lined up before he pulls the trigger. If you go back to all of his sackings he's done since he's been here, the next guy's been in really quickly. You know, Lamouchi was sacked. Houghton was announced that evening. I mean, even Lamouchi himself was announced when Martin O'Neill was still in his office, like 18 minutes after being sacked. You know, Ange Postecoglou announced 12 hours after Nuno gets sacked at midnight, all the rest of it. So he likes to have people lined up. And I don't know at the moment if he's going to be able to do that, apart from, as you talked about, guys, someone who's available. The obvious candidate for someone who's available, who'd walk into the job and would possibly even take it on the proviso that I'll give it you to the end of the season, would be Sean Dyche. If Marinakis said, look, I'll appoint you, but this is a stabilisation job. If you take us to places we never thought you would, then you know, obviously the job's yours. But I'm giving you to the end of the season. I think Sean Dyche would still take that. I really do, because it's Forest. But I don't know. Maybe not. Nigel Clough being mentioned, I think that ship has sailed, guys. I think I do rate Nigel Clough as a manager for what he's done in the game. It's that ship sailed. If we're still in the Championship, then Clough all day long. I can't see him turning to that to Nigel Clough. I think the legacy. Then. Say again.
It's the next season then for Nigel.
Yeah, I think that the legacy of the Clough name might be too much for Marinakis to handle with that ego that he's got potentially. All right, we're out of time, guys. I think we've kind of been around the houses. Again, I'm not sure where I'm at, but I'm going to say that if he were to get sacked tonight or tomorrow, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with that. But if he was given the international break and told you've got to turn it around against Chelsea and you got that game in the next one, I think I'd be fine with that as well at the moment. So that's where I'm at. I'm fine with either. Andrew Cove and Brucey, thank you very much to both of you for joining me. I'm going to give you guys 20 seconds on any final thoughts. Brucey?
Yeah, regardless of who's in the dugout over the next matches, I'm still going to be there supporting my team. Not there, here, I guess, watching, supporting my team. And I'm still excited about Europa. So, and again, like I said earlier, that's the hope that kills us. I still have hope. I picked us to win Europa, and that hasn't changed.
Yeah, my predictions are all changing every day. Andrew Cove?
I think if Ange is still in the job at the beginning of the year, because he's managed to turn it around and get the results and stabilise, I think every single fan that goes to watch Nottingham Forest and watches and supports will be perfectly happy with that. It's on Ange. If Ange can prove us wrong, I'm happy to be proven wrong. So come on, you Reds.
Yeah, I think what we have to remember, guys, is that we love our club. And as I said at the start, that if you go back, if you haven't caught the intro's there. It's basically only love can hurt like this. The love we have for our team, you know, it really hurts when they're going through the mill. It really hurts when, you know, we are in the kind of the mouths of journalists for the wrong reasons. Last season was so good and everyone was lauding us and behind us, and it just felt so good. And this season we're in the mouths of journalists and the media because of Ange Postecoglou and the losing record and all the rest of it. And it hurts because we want our team and our club to be doing so well. Each and every one of you watching and listening, you know, you Forest fans are amazing. And so you're not wrong to feel the way you feel, whether it's for or against Ange. You feel the way you feel because you're a passionate Forest fan. You know, the next guy along might feel slightly differently. So what we want to do is we want to share opinions and have respect for each other. But ultimately what we want is good things for our football club. If it's Ange in charge and he takes us to places that we hope he can, then yeah, we're going to get behind him. But if he's shown the door and the next guy comes in, then look, we have to pull together. We have to stay together. We have to stick together. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on top.